everybody, welcome back to The Den. It's been a while since we had a chance to podcast singularly in this form. Of course, you can listen to Hot Mic with Dom Izzo every day on podcast form at inforum.com. Today, we wanted to play our interview we did with ESPN's Senior Director of Programming and Acquisitions, Dan Margulis. We did this back in September when we broke the story that the FCS Championship Game was going to be moving to Sunday and to ABC. The North Dakota State, South Dakota State Championship Game will air on WDAY television, 1 o'clock on Sunday, January the 8th. All the questions I got this weekend were, why is the game on Sunday? Why is the game on ABC? Does ESPN and ABC know the NFL plays its final games of the regular season on that particular day? I asked all of these questions to Margulis, and I want you to listen to him. He is in the business. He's been doing this for over 30 years, and he's been scheduling FCS games for the better part of the last decade plus since he took over this position and with the NCAA championships over the last decade plus. So listen to what he has to say. Take this in, and I think you'll get a better understanding of why the game was moved to when it was. Obviously, there are going to be challenges going up against the National Football League. ESPN and ABC recognize and realize that. I think they still believe, though, there'll be a solid audience, and especially now with the two teams that are going to be in Texas, which we did not know when we did the interview in September, their optimism has to be getting higher as we get closer to the game. I am efforting. Hopefully, we'll get to visit with Dan again after the holidays. We get closer to the game to get his views on this happening and what the potential ratings could be for the game between the Bison and the Jackrabbits. Here now, my interview with Dan Margulis from ESPN. The 2023 FCS Championship Game will be moving to a Sunday this year, January 8th, 2023. And for the third time in the last 4 years, the game will be on network television, back on ABC. So it'll be on WDAY to wrap up the 2022 football season. The man who made the decision, or at least probably another decision-making, is good enough to join us from ESPN. Dan Margulis, the ESPN Senior Director of Programming and Acquisitions, joins us on this Friday morning. For people that aren't in the TV biz, tell us what that title means.
I don't know. My kids still don't understand it either. It means I program college and high school sports and a whole lot of other stuff. And, the stuff that's a lot of fun, actually. I handle all the NCAA championships, which is why this applies.
Well, I will tell you, as a huge women's basketball fan, I totally applaud the move to that on network television. Just before we get into the FCS stuff, can you explain that decision about moving that to a Sunday afternoon and putting it on ABC?
Yeah, I mean, it's just we've taken a look at a lot of our NCAA championships and particularly some of the women's sports, and the women's tournament is obviously our highest profile one. And it just made a lot of sense. We've looked at it over the years, how we can, expose it more. And there's an argument between afternoon and prime time and what that means. And ABC obviously is more of an afternoon product. But the company was really supportive of trying this. The NCAA was great working with us. And you take that and the women's gymnastics and women's softball now. We've exposed 3 more women's championships in some form on ABC. It's part of our overall college coverage strategy using ABC, which is why FCS Championship is there as well.
Dan, I had heard for the last couple of years the FCS Championship Game potentially could have moved to a different day. Friday night had been thrown around, or Sunday. The decision was to go with Sunday. Tell us about those discussions with the NCAA and why the eventual move was made.
Sure. I mean, and we look at everything every year, right? This isn't a long-term decision that we made. Hopefully it is. We've gotten pushback about going Saturday at noon. We've looked at Friday night. The challenges with Friday night when you're ESPN is if you're going to go Friday night, you're looking at ESPN versus because you're not going to get ABC, right? And it's NBA. So it's NBA doubleheader. So it's hard to clear. So we have looked at it. We looked at maybe ESPN2 as a possibility. But with the NFL shift, and remember, NFL is playing on Saturday this year, and it's on ESPN and ABC.
Yep.
So we decided to move it to Sunday, move it a little bit later, right? So it's 1 o'clock local, your time, right? You're on Central Time. I always screw that up. And put it on ABC. And, again, when you think about what's going on at that period, we've got the CFP going on, and the FCS Championship just folds into that coverage, right? So we look at it as part of everything that we're doing with college football. We do 40 bowl games. We have the FCS tournament. The championship now is on ABC. Then you've got the CFB championship the next night. So I think it's a great fit. It's up against the NFL. It is what it is. But I think the FCS audience is loyal. College football fans love finding it, and it'll do fine.
I hear that's the biggest pushback I've heard over the last couple of days from football fans, that when we did this story was, wait a minute, the NFL's going on there. Can you explain that, of going head to head with what is the final week of the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, again, if it was on Saturday, still early, it's going to run against the NFL in some form. And in this case, we carry it. So you guys know how FCS football goes. They tend to run very long, right? So unless you start really early, we start our pregame coverage for the NFL on both ESPN and ABC at 3:30 Eastern, so 2:30 local. So there's no doubt we would have, because do we do it early? We can't get ABC until 1:00 if you were going to use that at the earliest. And we would have not been able to do it. We also would have been scheduling ourselves into a nightmare. And there's nothing worse than when you do that. And trust me, Bison fans are not quiet. So I would hear more from them than going up against the NFL and asking people to make a choice. But, in this day and age, it's always good to avoid high profile product where you can. And obviously the NFL is the highest as it gets. But at the same time, you can't live in a world where you just avoid everything and be scared of it. We love this product. This championship game is one of my favorite events. I go to it every year. I'm literally weeding through Bison fans, and I follow the tracker and everything that goes on there. But we go in knowing, and look, we'll see. And if for some reason it doesn't work, then we look at it. The great thing about our partnership with the NCAA and with the FCS commissioners is that we can always evaluate it afterwards. But I feel confident that it'll be a good story, and I think it'll be a great experience. And again, you're ending up on ABC, and it's a high profile spot for it.
I would argue, and you could echo this, you're in the business right now. You aren't competing at all in that time slot, right? I don't know what you would put there last year. So to have live sports programming will be better than anything that you had there before.
Right. I mean, there's always the philosophy. If it's the NFL, do you do gymnastics or wrestling or something that's counter to it? But you can't go through an entire season of not putting live. Is still better than what we used to call. I don't think people understand it anymore, but you do. You can't just put bars and tone up there. Yeah, like you've got to put your best foot forward in any window you can. I said bars and tone to my kids. They had no idea what I was talking about, by the way. But, and again, why not put a high profile NCAA championship? And we're excited about it. We really are. I think like I said, this is one of our premier events, and we want to have a good payoff like this.
Did you get any pushback from the FCS on this?
No, they've been great. They've been great. They really have. I mean, they ask the same questions everyone asks. They're smart people. And we went through different options, but this really was the best option. And I think the appeal of being on ABC, as you said, this will make it 3 of the last 4 years. Year 2 was kind of a disaster because there was weather and it was,
yes,
it was a nightmare. But I think that they look at that as a payoff. And again, nothing is permanent, which is what's great about this. But hopefully, and I feel pretty confident it will work.
Dan, the last time a normal season, the 2020 title game with North Dakota State and James Madison had 2.68 million viewers. That's really, really good for the FCS. I hate to ask you to make a prediction, but if you're in that ballpark for this year, would you consider that a win?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. Now, again, we didn't have the competition we had that year, and the game was competitive, but
really good.
There's so many factors, and it's hard because my job performance at the end of the day is determined by ratings, which is really, especially then when you start narrow down to the performance of it, 18 to 23-year-olds, you're really starting to push it. But you need a competitive game. You need a great environment. We got that, so that's good, right? The place will be packed. We know that already. And teams, whoever's in it, one of the nice things about North Dakota State, they seem to think it's an annual right for them, and so far it really has been. But they built up a national interest and have sort of become, we joke about it being the Alabama of the FCS, but I think when somebody has that kind of success, everyone's rooting for them or against them. So either way, they have an interest in it. And then some other teams have really started to emerge as well. So again, it depends on a lot of different factors, but hopefully it'll do all right, and I'll still have my job when we next talk.
I'm interested because we hear this all the time, especially in Fargo, with everything moving around with college realignment. I'm interested. You're in the business. The TV value of North Dakota State is what?
Yeah, they are obviously. I think people love football. Okay, whether it's the NFL, whether it's Division One, whether it's FCS, whether it's FBS, whether it's FCS. That's always going to be one of the driving sports between that and Premier Basketball. And then we've seen some other sports emerge, and they are at the top of the FCS pyramid, right? So they certainly have value to us. When we are able to do them, and the majority of what we do is digitally. Again, it gets into some of the complications of the world. They have a very healthy local package, right? So the people that are local are seeing it there, but what we're able to do and work with ESPN Plus in particular is sort of give them that national exposure, so it works well. So they're definitely a valuable partner. The conference is a great partner with us. Commissioner is tremendous. She's really helped us build what we've tried to do with it. But they are definitely a valuable partner.
Would you see for that as a potential FBS? Would that be alluring? Because I get asked this all the time. I'm in television, but I'm not making the decision. So, a commissioner president value, is there value to them are they as big a national brand as maybe people up at the university believe they are?
I mean, again, I also am not a commissioner, nor am I a president. I think sometimes there's value to being king of the pond, or whatever, however you want to word it, and then going into another place. And then while you're a name, it takes a while to rebuild that brand value. So you come in with, if you expand and you join Conference USA, pick a conference, and and you're building, you have a brand value that you come in there with, but will you have that sustained level of success? And at the end of the day, that's what determines. And North Dakota State has been extremely successful. And as long as they're successful, they'll have a brand name. But once they start to lose that nationally, obviously that goes down. So
I'm interested with this, Dan, going forward, that the ESPN NCAA deal, I think, is up after next year or the year after that? But with negotiations on that, how important is the FCS championship in its whole that you've now done for the better part, more than a decade now, of keeping that on ESPN?
Well, again, these negotiations are complicated. Our deal goes back to 2010, the deal that we're working off of. And over the years in that, we have built out a number of championships together with the NCAA that had very minimal exposure at the beginning. And with all the different platforms we have, with E Plus and EU and ESPN and ESPN2 and now ABC, I'm talking FCS, but also with some of the other championships, it's been able to grow. I think we've grown the championship together. Obviously, you don't grow it without a good product. But so when we sit down with a negotiation, obviously it's going to be something, that's important to us, but you never know how those things go. But we have a very valuable and great partnership with them. And, FCS, we do 31 championships, right? So FCS is one of them, 16 women, 15 men. We've grown that over the years. It's a lot. It's actually a lot of fun. To me, they're the most fun things. I think I've worked on the pro sports, and I think college just is a different, as you guys know, it's just a different animal. So when you go to an FCS championship, or you go to women's gymnastics, or you go to a beach volleyball, or any of these things, they're championships. It's great. And it's, the student athlete as you truly think of what the student athlete is.
I always get fans, this is either emails, tweets about, well, why can't ESPN just do this and just put this game on at this certain time? Well, you were in charge of that. Could you just illuminate how difficult that is on scheduling? Like, North Dakota State has had that 11 a.m. Saturday quarterfinal window, which has been hugely beneficial, I think, to both ESPN and the school. But how difficult is that when you do that, to schedule out for those games?
It's hard because we're not just, sometimes we're scheduling against other, we sit in a room, right? I'm the advocate for the college stuff. My team's the advocate for the college stuff, but there's advocates, then college basketball that time of year, right? There's a ton of that. There's, when you're talking November, December, everything overlaps. There's bowl games, there's NBA, NHL now. tennis, you name it. So it's hard. You just sort of have a different way of thinking, and you try to carve out your spot. So a good example is a quarterfinal spot. We've been able to sort of, secure that. It's had success. We keep it in the future. And then it's just a balancing act, and we work together as a team to sort of balance it out. I'm very thankful. When I started ESPN, we just started our second platform. I literally was there for the launch of ESPN2. And, it was a lot harder to make some of the decisions. Now you have a lot more flexibility, and you bring ESPN Plus into the mix, and it really opens things up.
For people that also don't understand this, I'm interested just the difference on network television as opposed to ESPN2, which was where the Bison championship game was. I say that they were the national championship game last year. How different amount of viewers roughly is that from network TV to ESPN2?
It's just that over there TV just has a larger built-in audience. Now that doesn't mean that they're all sports fans. So
right.
It's great to have that as a place to be, but that doesn't mean everybody is going there. So sometimes prime time on ESPN will do better than an afternoon on an ABC. Like, you just don't know how it's going to go. But because it's not reliant on other systems to get through. Over the air television just has a larger base. I don't remember the latest number it is, but that's sort of the difference in it of just who's available to see it.
You've been really generous with your time. Just have a couple of questions left, and I get asked all this time, and I have the answer for this, but you're the guy, you're the expert, so I'll let you defer about getting more FCS games on during the regular season. I know the Big Sky now is a deal; they have a couple games each year. Real estate is tough. You're the one in charge of that. Is that a possibility going forward?
Yeah, no, we talk about it every year. We look at it. We'll see going forward if some other windows open up. Some of the commissioners are very creative. I think the Big Sky has a built-in advantage because of their time zone. Their level of competition is also phenomenal.
Yep.
But the time zone helps because that's usually a window that we need to fill, as opposed to when you're dealing with Eastern and Central. And, if you want to be on ESPN, do you want to play on a Wednesday or a Thursday or Friday? Because that's what you're talking about. Their Saturdays are full. But that's being said, I've had a lot of conversations with the commissioners about how we can, pick our spots. Game day has gone to North Dakota State in the past, gone to JMU. They were very close last year to going to Montana State. And after the first quarter of the Ohio State game, I wish they had. But it's something we definitely look at. We really like the product. I think, the world has been sort of going nuts in the FBS space. I think the FCS has done a really nice job of focusing on their stuff in the football. We have partnerships with almost every one of them, and looking at doing something. So yeah, it's absolutely possible. And we look at it every year. Just doesn't always work out with everything that we've got going on. And again, it's not just football you're going against here. So.
You mentioned you've been to Frisco. Have you been to Fargo yet? Have you made it out for a game here?
I haven't. I'm dying to. No. Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, it would be quite the experience on that, and we would love to have you back on the show. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us the ESPN perspective on this, because I don't have all the answers I was trying to explain, but you were perfect on that. So thanks so much for taking time out of your Friday, and hopefully we can do this again soon, okay?
All right, and thanks for having me on before your dad. That was nice.
Hey, he's a big star out here, I'll just tell you that. Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
We appreciate ESPN's Dan Margulis for coming on The Den, and to Amanda Brooks from ESPN for making that interview possible. You can check out full coverage at inforum.com throughout the week and leading up. No off time for us, despite the holidays, to get us ready for the Bison and the Jackrabbits in Frisco, Texas. Thanks so much for listening to Dizzo's Den, the podcast. Much more coming up the rest of the year and into 2023, so stay right here.